Okay, lesson 31. Today we start with a major subject. It's the last major subject of the course. We call it the philosophy of the Kleshas, and it is Kriya Yoga based on the book Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. It's a very interesting subject if you understand the practical value of it, because it's the science of misery. Not just the science of misery, but if you pay attention, the science of how to avoid misery. To do that, we have to look inside ourselves. First of all, there are two kinds of Kriya. There's the Kriya from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which we have done. The 7 exercises that we did to introduce us to pranayama, energy control. And there is the Kriya Yoga from Patanjali. In both cases, the meaning is the same. The purpose is different. Also widely misunderstood, both of them. The Kriya Yoga from Svatmarama in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, first of all, the meaning of the word Kriya. Kriya means, Kriya comes from the stem word kr. That is the same stem word of which karma comes. It means do. But there are many ways of doing, and that's where it is important. Because since we were born, we have been doing all the time. And we end up experiencing misery. We end up in conflicts with the world around us. And we don't know why. Because we are not aware that it is caused by us doing. Just doing. Without awareness, without consciousness, without self-reflection. Kriya is the yoga way of doing. That means everything you do, anything, you start doing consciously. So when we did Kriya in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we started doing some exercises, mind exercises, to consciously bring us in contact with the energy of which we exist. There is a lot of confusion about Kriya, and at most it is not understood at all. So people literally swallow pieces of cloth. People literally suck up water through the anus, or pull a cord through the nostril and out the mouth. Because it is called purification exercises. The Kriyas in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika are called purification exercises. So we think about cleansing. The grossest form of cleansing. It is purification, but purification of the senses. Because our senses are not receptive enough to feel energy, to detect energy. That's also why from the very beginning of the course I've drawn your attention to the concept of energy, so that you gradually get used to it. Because everything in yoga, in the end, is based on energy and how you deal with it. And that's only possible if you first become conscious of energy. The concept of energy, everything in the universe, in this world, exists out of energy, including myself. Kriya of Patanjali is much more sophisticated, because it deals with our daily life 24/7, we need to start becoming conscious of the law of cause and effect if we want to end the cycle of suffering. Come in, Gita. Pali pali. This is a very interesting subject. So the subtitle of this Kriya Yoga, according to Patanjali, is the philosophy of the Kleshas. Kleshas is the misery that we experience. So what is a klesha? To understand what a klesha is, you have to understand what causes it. But a klesha is every moment of suffering, pain, experience that we experience in daily life. Even this is misinterpreted, not only in Oriental philosophy, also in Christianity and in Islam. People say, it is my destiny, it is my fate that I have to suffer, so I will suffer indignity. Yoga says, no, open your eyes. There is a reason why you suffer, and if you get it, if you understand it, if you see how you yourself are in fact causing it, you can then end the cycle, the vicious cycle, the pattern. A klesha is the misery that you experience, but yoga says, don't blame the outside world for your misery. Yes, other people may be involved. But if you continue to blame other people without looking at yourself, it will never stop. Because people are only reacting. The law of cause and effect. In essence, this means we are always the cause. If we undergo misery, we have emitted a vibration, an energy that attracted the misery to come towards us. So the misery that comes towards us, that is the klesha. Now, how is it possible that we attract this misery? First of all, we should ask ourselves, and we do, but in the wrong way, why am I suffering this misery and not my brother, my sister, my neighbor, my teacher, etc.? So we do ask that question, but based on ego. So we feel pity for ourselves without coming to the truth, without answering the question, because we don't want to know that we are actually the cause of it. But why is it that I experience other misery than you do? And each individual in this class undergoes different kinds of miseries. Why? It starts here. Samskara is, you can compare this with a computer. Computer, hard disk, has many programs downloaded. A samskara is a downloaded piece of data. It will only manifest, it will only awaken if you click. If you click the icon, if you click the data. As long as you don't touch it, as long as you don't click the icon, it's dormant, it's sleeping. The samskara is essential information about you, in particular about your past. Because the samskara is an impression in your memory of something that you experienced in your past. Very often these are negative experiences, traumatic experiences. And the reason why I react differently in the same situation than you would is because my experiences in the past were different than those of yours. So when somebody punches you, you may say, wait a minute, why did you do that? I don't like what you did, but I will forgive you. You react in a very mature way, in a controlled way. Or when you punch me in my face, I draw my gun and I shoot you, bang, bang. Why do I react so differently from you? That is explained by my past experiences. I must have had some threatening, traumatic experiences in the past that, when triggered, makes me very angry and aggressive. So human beings are full of samskaras. They don't manifest. We can function relatively normally as long as they are not being triggered. How are they triggered? By situations that you end up in, by circumstances that you come across. A person saying something, a person doing something, something that happens that triggers, that accelerates the energy on the level of that impression, that memory. The moment that that happens, it's called a vritti. A vritti is a whirl. A vritti is a whirl of energy. So it was dormant, not manifesting. It's triggered, it becomes a whirl of energy, a vibration. The thing about vibrations, and this of course goes back to energy again. With our logical thinking, rational mind, we seriously underestimate the power of vibration. It works like this. Do you feel my intention? I'm sure you do. You know that I'm teaching with a purpose, with a passion, with my heart. You feel that, so you connect and you absorb. That is vibration. If you have a feeling that I'm standing here talking nonsense, just because I'm only interested in the tuition fee that you pay, you feel that and you lose interest. That is vibration. In the same way, if I have a negative thought, if I experience anger, I'm not even speaking, I'm not even acting, but just the thought alone, you pick up that vibration. You feel the negativity. That is the vritti. A vritti can be positive, it can be negative. If I am full of friendliness, maitri, if I'm full of friendliness, full of compassion, you feel that, you will react in kind. You will not react to me with anger and aggression. That is the vritti. So if my vritti is friendly, the klesha I attract is friendly. If my vritti is negative, aggressive, the klesha coming towards me will be negative, aggressive. Can you see this? So this is something we have to overcome. Again, ego. Because what happens? Somebody treats me bad. And I point fingers and I say, you treated me bad. Why the hell did you do that? And I'm always the victim. And this teaches us that if we attract people that treat us bad, there must be some vibration coming out of us that gave that people kind of green light to treat us like that. So we need, instead of pointing fingers, we need to look inside ourselves. How is there any possible involvement of me? Now, I make it sound easy, it's not. It's always very complex because interactions between people are very complex. And the fact that yoga is telling you to look at yourself does not mean that those people are not responsible for their behavior. How do you deal with that? You say to yourself, that's their problem. That's their karma to deal with. If they act in such a way, they will have their own Kleshas to deal with. And surely they will. So that's how you can help yourself to control yourself, not to act and go along in the vicious cycle of negativity, negative energy, negative vibration. Clear? Can you follow this? It's very interesting. But where does Kriya come in here? By starting to undergo misery consciously, honestly. Next time when you have a conflict, whether that is with a loved one, a partner, a child, your child, or in the street or in the supermarket with a stranger, you, instead of blaming the other people for their behavior, which we are not condoning or whitewashing, everybody is responsible for their own. But Kriya means that we, this time, undergoing the conflict, we say, wait a minute, what is my part in all this? And if you're honest and able to overcome your ego, you will see that there is a responsibility on your own part. Can be painful to start being honest, but it's very important to evolve, to grow, to move to the next level. Very important to get rid of all that misery you've always been suffering, which you always thought is part of life and you just have to accept, and which you think will continue all the rest of your life. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to, but you have to swallow your ego, you have to swallow your pride, and look in the mirror honestly. Kriya means do consciously, even undergoing misery consciously. The very interesting part here is that the misery that you undergo becomes your teacher, your life teacher, because it teaches you, it shows you who you are. And with that you can make links to the past. With that you can reflect, you can bring up memories that you never thought about, even going back to childhood, early childhood, where you will see that there were events that have affected you deeply, but most importantly, unconsciously, subconsciously. You start to see now where your anger comes from, triggered in a certain situation. You start to see the memory related to that samskara will come to the surface as a result of this approach. And you will have memory that you never had before. Going back to even possibly when you were just a baby. Traumatic experience is embedded in you and will determine the rest of your life, your destiny, if you never come to the point of awareness of that trauma. So people who constantly fail in life, they fail because their samskaras are being triggered all the time because they're full of trauma, are triggered all the time, and they have a constant vicious cycle of reacting upon everything that happens in their environment, which becomes a huge distraction in everything they pursue. From education to work to future plans, everything just falls apart and fails. That is a very extreme example, but I've had such people in my family, and I was even myself going on that path of constant failure. Until Ajita told me, what do you want? What do you need to do for that? And then just go to work and forget all the rest. So let's have a look at the first sutra of chapter 2 from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, where he starts with this: austerity, self-study that leads to the knowledge of the self, and complete resignation to Ishvara, God, constitute preliminary yoga, Kriya yoga. You know what you're looking at here? These days, if you go to a yoga class, the teacher will tell you yoga is exercise, flexibility, strength, well-being, wellness, health, om, spirituality. No, Patanjali said this is yoga. This is how yoga starts. Your path of yoga starts with austerity, self-study, and complete resignation to Ishvara. Why? Isn't that strange? Weird? No, not with all that you know about the yamas and the niyamas. I've gone out of my way to explain it in a practical way. It starts with austerity, which I told you is consciously. The word consciousness comes back all the time. Consciously subject yourself to discomfort in order to gain strength, health, and make energy rise up, in order to allow intellect and the higher characteristics like vision, wisdom, intuition to manifest. Starts with austerity. We need to reverse that tendency of energy to contract and manifest to the bottom. Austerity, when done correctly, the yoga way, starts to make energy rise up. Naturally, when you do this correctly, step 2 occurs, self-study. I have explained the process before, probably more than once. Austerity makes the energy rise up, awaken the intellect and consciousness. The first thing you start to explore is what? The self. Self-study occurs spontaneously in every serious yoga practitioner. Every serious yoga practitioner is full of questions about the self and about life in general because of this. That is self-study. That naturally brings up the need for the third step, complete resignation to Ishvara or God, which is the very last of the niyamas, surrender to God or surrender to the Most High, What does that mean again? It means, based upon your increasing insight and understanding, that you see that the way things are is the way that it is meant to be. That is, that you see that the misery that you encounter in your life is there for a reason. And that reason is not to make you miserable. The reason is to teach you something so that you can evolve, so that you can learn, so that you can start to learn, to determine your own destiny. Not anymore determined by your past, your traumatic experiences, your culture, the way you have been indoctrinated by the media and your government. Beyond that, there is you, your essence, your core. But it doesn't come without pain. You have to go through the process, which is also a purification process, that starts today with consciously undergoing your conflicts and your misery and honestly drawing conclusions about that. From that, not about other people who commit those violations, but about yourself. And that is where an enormous dynamic growth starts. And that growth will never stop. Once the lid is off the pan, it cannot be closed. The process will continue. Every time you slacken off, every time you doze, every time you fall asleep, which means you're not paying attention, you will be hit with misery again. You will see it is a pattern. Because human beings have a tendency, in spite of our spiritual practice leading to more consciousness, human beings have a tendency to slacken off. We just get busy with daily life, practical material things. And in a moment of being unguarded, in a moment of not paying attention, remember the deer in the heart chakra with the eyes wide open, in moments of not paying attention, we get hit with other misery again. The irony is that misery will hit you harder than before. Why? There are two reasons for that. First reason is because you're conscious now. Second reason is that you are more and more purifying. If you experience misery every day, several times a day, it becomes normal. But because of your yoga practice, you eliminate more and more misery from your life. And instead of happening every day, several times a day, it happens only once a day. And further down the road, it happens only once a week. And even further down the road, it happens only once a month. So you become spoiled. You become used to that nice peace in your daily life. Generally, no conflicts, no misery. What was normal once before, so you became numb to, slowly is eliminated. We call that the purification process. But then that day, when that day comes, that misery hits you, it hits you 10 times as hard. You're just so much more sensitive to it. When that happens, do not feel sad or sorry for yourself, or just take it as an indication that you must keep your eyes open. But that is a process you will be dealing with all your life, and very gradually you get better and better at it. Your intuition will more and more be involved in the process, and you will come to the point that you see misery coming before it has actually manifested. Which means that you can nip it in the bud, in the samskara stage. I forgot to write down the third stage, because that is of course when the vritti has attracted the misery. And that misery that comes to you is called klesha. Sutra 2. And this is the whole essence of what this is about. Sutra 2. Kriya Yoga is practiced in order to attenuate, soften, reduce in force, Kleshas, and to bring about samadhi. From what I've told you so far, it's already clear where this is leading. Sutra 2, I've already explained, except a part of the samadhi. Attenuate means to reduce. So, Kriya Yoga is practiced in order to reduce our misery. And it really does. If you can overcome ego and be bluntly honest about your own part in every event that is happening in your life. That is where you learn, gain insight, and grow. Samadhi is a very mysterious practice in yoga that most yoga teachers fail to explain in a practical way. When they try to explain, it ends up in a very complicated story that nobody really understands. Samadhi, that is the natural state of the human being to contemplate. Every human being has that ability, provided that you are in perfect circumstances, perfect condition. Total sattva. What disturbs our ability to contemplate is all those conflicts we constantly encounter in daily life. There is no sattva. There is a constant fluctuation between tamas and rajas, which is aggravated by all the conflicts that we encounter, all the misery that we encounter. So, it's a very nice promise. Bring peace in your life, and you will obtain that elusive, mysterious state of samadhi, which is not elusive or mysterious at all. It's something that you experience once in a while by coincidence. When you're in a deep state of contemplation, where you have an epiphany, where you have a sudden, very deep insight into something, in a very easy way, it just came to you. In cartoons, when a cartoon character has such a moment, they put a light bulb above their head that emits light. It literally is a moment of light. I told you before that when you have a problem, dealing with a problem, the harder you think, the more difficult that problem seems to be. The more complex it seems to become. The harder you try to think, what happens is energetically, is you block your energy circulation, because if you think about something very hard, frantically trying to solve it, there is a tension. There is a tension that blocks the energy circulation that does not allow you to find a solution, to have an insight. So what you need to do when you are dealing with a problem is to let it go. Go about your daily business and be confident that that problem continues to evolve in your higher mind. And in a very unguarded moment, while you're just eating an ice cream, or ride a subway, or walk in the street or in the park, Suddenly, it's there. Suddenly, the answer is there. It's not an answer, it's an insight. A problem is only a problem because we don't see the essence of what we are dealing with. But in a moment of contemplation, you oversee the whole problem, enabling you to come to the essence of what you're dealing with. And the moment that you grasp the essence, the problem is not a problem anymore. I have to remind you about how rich multinational companies create an environment for the highest managers in the company to allow them to be in contemplation so that they can make important, profitable decisions about billions of dollars for the company. It is the reason why those people earn so much money, why they have a huge house somewhere on the outskirts of the city, in the hills, the most coveted. Here in Korea, that's Hanam-dong, Songbuk-dong. Gangnam is very expensive, but it's not samadhi-inducing. What is really samadhi-inducing is a nice house on the hills in Songbuk-dong with a beautiful view, where you have lots of space, a big villa. And when you go to work, you don't drive, you don't take the subway, you have a chauffeur to take you there. In a car that is completely silent, has incredible shock absorbers, so there is hardly any movement. So you can stay in that condition, even commuting in a city like Seoul with 12 million people. All that money spent on the director of the company, the CEO of the company, with his expensive house in the hills and his expensive car with driver, and all the servants that surround him, and the expensive office on the top floor with a beautiful view and the most expensive interior, is all designed to come to samadhi. So we as simple people, we won't have a Maybach with a driver and a house in the hills of Songbuk-dong or Hanam-dong. But we can create our own sattva without spending huge amounts of money. Basically, you need a mat, a cushion, and the discipline to do Kriya, start doing consciously. And you will get there too. Questions? Okay, let's have a short break.